Good afternoon. Hey, Brad, how are you? Hey, Dr. Caton, how are you?
And how are you?
I'm excited to be here. Well, you know how it is, just as you get to class time, everybody starts calling and emailing. But I always work, then my phone falls off. I'll have to get up and get it. All right. So what's going on in the world today? Anybody have anything special? Noteworthy? A laugh? So, Dr. Caton, when do y'all start when do y'all start state testing in high school?
May 28th is our first one. And then we'll finish up that third, is that right?
May 28th through June the 3rd.
I think June 3rd or 4th. Yeah, something like that. June 3rd, 4th. Yeah.
When does end the grade testing in the primary?
Don't get me to lie. I don't know. It's all I can do to keep up with what I do.
Yeah. I was just wondering, they were talking about going back and expanding the window.
Yeah. Districts could ask for 5 days beyond. So we got, a 10-day window for ourselves.
Yeah.
But
I think they're talking about having more than that for elementary and middle.
Yeah, we are starting in elementary in our district. The 27th, I believe, is when we're going to start testing. But since they're also making us do retests this year, retakes, that's actually pushing us past the last day of school for students. So that's going to be interesting to require kids to come back after the last day to retake a test.
Yeah. Didn't we fall off this bridge one time before with all this expanding the testing and going late and trying to figure out using it as a basis for summer school and all that? Didn't we already go home with wet pants over that once or twice before? We just do the same things over and over again.
Definition of stupidity.
Yep. Or the CMS way.
Oh my
God. Hire more people to do the same thing over and over again. Which is, that's the
I'm scared. I'm so scared. I'm so scared.
Yeah, it won't go well. You know how this is. You know all the things that are going to happen out of all this. And I can sit and can list about 5 things, and none of them are good. That's going to come out of all this mess. I have to teach one of the statistical functions that I have to teach to my doctoral students is regression to the mean. That if you artificially inflate your scores by working on just how to take the test, that those gains will dissipate. It's called regression, statistical function in calculus. So I have to teach this. And if you want kids to learn more, you have to teach them more. And so you can work on the process, which is how to take a math test, or you can work on the content and teach them more math. Now, the one that's sustainable and the gains and that you do is if you teach them more math, not how to manipulate the test. But what happens when you get into longer periods of time, we sit and do more of that skill and drill, how to take the test. We get into that. Those gains go away real quickly. Then we get into the notion of, are we going to count the retest in our scores? And I have to explain that statistical function that no, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that. It's not ethical. So what we do is say the cutoff is 70. The kids that are between 65 and 69, within 5 points of passing, we retest them. We give them, and basically because we just retest them immediately, we're just giving them the chance to be lucky. Luck's part of, we teach luck as a statistical function as well in calculus. But you can only count the retested scores if you give the kids that score from 70 to 75 the chance to be unlucky. Retest them too. Can you imagine how many parents your kid passed, but we're going to test him again just to make sure. And if he fails this time, then he fails. Could you imagine trying to do that? But the whole retest deal, we want to slide those in to try to get our scores up. Well, it's just so many things wrong. But so I can already see when I was on the state board and the state board call and the administrative conference and all that. I mean, they announced it. What was that in March, that this was coming, that it was just going to be a train wreck. So I'm not at all surprised that it's going to be a train wreck. So let's talk about.
Dr. Lamb, how do you think the retesting is going to go? Do you think these students are going to retest, and how do you think that's going to go?
Well, I mean, all you're doing is giving them a chance to get lucky. I mean, the retesting, it's just, can they guess better the second time around? So you can't really use that as the basis for anything, but because what I suspect is going to happen is we're going to do what we did before. Because we retested them, we're going to pass them. Not because they did any better, but because we simply retested them, we're going to pass kids. And that's just going to be a nightmare for the people that get them on the other end. Now, we know summer school is of little or no value. That's why we stopped it before. So why in the world, if we know it was already of no value, why are we doing it again now? But that's what you do when you don't know what else to do. You go back and do what you used to do or what you're familiar with. That's exactly what we don't know what to do now. We've never faced pandemic before.
I think that the plan that they have for high school for summer school proves that not many people out there know much about high school.
Exactly. We do something that we've done before, but somebody's going to make some money. Somebody's selling them something. But we know that it doesn't work. We've proven that over and over and over again. I can only teach this lesson in calculus for doctoral students so many times before I want to poke somebody's eyes out. This is how the calculus, this is the math, folks. I don't make this stuff up. This is how it works. And then after I go through all that with them, they say, well, that means stuff like all these programs that we're running and doing all this stuff, that stuff really doesn't matter, does it? Duh. You just wake up. Where you been for the last 10 or 15 years in the business? You're supposed to know better than this. It's just a way to waste money. It's pork barrel. It's a way to reward districts that stayed open against common sense in the spring. That's what summer school is. It's pork barrel.
Well, I was told by someone, I don't know how true it is because the only reason that these states are testing is because they receive federal funding for testing.
That's correct. It's pork barrel. It's money. This is what it's all about. Because
they really don't want to test, but
they have federal money coming. That's exactly right. It's not a lot of federal. It's mostly state money. It's pork barrel. The General Assembly has appropriated the first round is $41 million on the first round to give out if you'll run summer school. It's pork barrel. It's exactly what it is. It's a way to reward your friends and punish your enemies. Exactly what it is. It's got nothing to do with education and actually, kids learning something. God forbid we did that with them. It's a transfer it's a capital transfer.
So we're going to end up testing them, and then we're going to end up exempting them from the test to pass them. Is that what we're going to end up doing?
If we retest them and they still don't, well, then we'll do an exemption. That's exactly right. And we'll say, well, we did the best we could. We tested them and retested them. So all that goes into our lesson for the evening, by the way, which is funding. That's what we're going to talk about tonight, is school funding. So let me catch up where we are and remind me to, I want to spend a few minutes on the cap again tonight at the end. And please remember, I've got a place, let me share my screen while I'm thinking about it. If you're turning in any work to be reviewed again, this semester I review it all. And so you've got your skip task for peer instructor review. And if you click on where it says cap materials, If you've gone ahead and started your cap, I've got the task and the prompts right here. I've got some examples, and I've also got the boxes. So, you know, I was hoping we could get to task 1 and task 2 before summer. These right here is where you put your work if you want your cap reviewed, task 1 and task 2, and I will review that and turn it around. And here, if you want to go ahead and get them graded, what I think the grade on them, I've got Dropbox. Now, these are optional, obviously, but right here, you can turn in your cap for review right here. And if you're industrious enough to go past 2, just use them. They're multiple use. You can get task 3 and 4 reviewed right here in either one of these boxes as well. We'll just create a new thread inside of them. But remember, this is
Dr. Lamb,
yes.
I'm so sorry. I was going to say, you said you were going to go over that at the end though, because I do have one question.
Yeah.
I'm
going to cover. I've got the cap already. I've got the task and prompts already queued up right here to go over again. There they are right there. I've got them queued up to go over again tonight.
Okay. I just had a specific question about separating facilities and resources.
Now's a good time to ask.
The facilities and resources, I know like in some of the examples they're combined. Do they need to be combined, or do we need to do
one out? The first half
2 separate write-ups?
The first half is, you know, if you look at that, they're put together on the TWC. You should pull one for facilities and one for resources. Resources are usually like office supplies and stuff like that. Facilities are, you know, are my bathrooms clean and those kinds of things. So pull one from each. You got to pull 5, but those are put together. You're exactly right. But
so would we need to put 2 different figures? Sorry, I've already written everything. I'm just trying to like get it all fixed before sending it to you tonight.
You should treat it as 2 separate sections.
Okay, so I could do 2 separate images or figures for those.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Rachel. So what we're talking about here, and let me switch browsers right quick. So what we're talking about, if we go to the NCTEA working condition survey results, what you're going to see, let's see if I can get to it here. It redirects you now. Okay, so if we look at the results, what Rachel's talking about is, I want to see, we'll do Allegheny County Schools, we'll do Allegheny High School. And I like, now the students all tend to like this, you see these little symbols? I tend to like this one. They like the other one. So what you notice is here on this one, you have time, what Rachel's saying is facilities and resources are together in one area. But if you'll notice, the first one up here is about resources, which is materials, digital content and resources, technology, reliable communication, office, professional support. Then it goes to facilities, well-maintained, adequate space. So what you notice is the first half generally is always about resources, and the second half is about facilities. Now, time is a separate one. So for the cap, you've got to do, you know, which of these items is the lowest. So for the school, if we were picking our lowest item, let's say 95, 85, 87, 84. So you got your pick between 184 and 285s. Efforts are made to minimize the amount of routine paperwork teachers require. That's probably the one I'd pick. That's probably the one that I would pick. Because it's the closest to the actual average of the district. It's the lowest at the school and it's the closest. this one is low, but it's a lot higher than the rest of the district, so I wouldn't pick that one. So this one would be the one that I would pick. Efforts from this would be my item, doing my item analysis. This would be the item that I would pick as one of my items that I would, when I did my survey in task 1 of the CAP, what I would do, I'd just copy and paste this in Qualtrics or a Google Doc or SurveyMonkey. Do you agree that efforts are made to minimize the amount of routine paperwork? Okay, for facilities and resources, for resources, I would pick appropriate instructional materials. That would be my second item that I would pick. I would pick the school environment is clean and well maintained. I would pick that one because, as you can see, it's below the district average. That's why it's highlighted here. And I would probably pick this one as well. So I would pick 2 here. I'd pick one from resources and 2 from facilities here. So now after time, these 3, I've got 4 items. And so we don't have to do these 2, the next one. Teacher leadership, we've already done. School leadership, I'd pick 1 or 2 here, 87, 87, 86, 84. I'd probably just pick 1 here. Teachers are held to high professional standards for delivering instruction, probably one I'd pick there. And so time, facilities, resources. We do have to do empowerment, teacher leadership. So we got to pick 1 from here. I'd pick that one at 83. The faculty has effective process for making group decisions, and that'd be it. So I would have 6 items on my needs assessment survey back to the faculty. I'd have 6. I'd have 2 on facilities and 1 on all the other areas. So that'd be a total of 6. You should limit yourself to 10, no matter how bad your data is. Do not pick more than 2 per any area, period. If you do that, I'll send it back.
So what if you have, because at my school, I don't know if the data is very reliable in terms that most of the scores are 96%, 98%, 100%, and there's only 50 people who take it. So that means that 2 people out of the whole building say no to the 96%, which is like that's pretty much the mode of the whole data set.
Yeah. That's why you're double checking it. That's why you do the needs assessment of the exact same question.
Right. So is it okay if you picked, if in one of those sections, like in terms of specifically for like teacher leadership in mind, there were 3 areas that had the 96%. So that's what I went back and asked them, because they all 3 had 96%.
That'd be, if you want to do something like that, but try to keep this thing at 10 questions.
Okay.
The whole notion is when they answered this, they had that, how many questions is there? Well over 100 questions. I mean, goodness. It takes like 2 hours to take this thing. The whole notion here is they get fatigued. We want to do something that they can do just as fast. That's the whole point of this. We want to avoid the limitation of survey fatigue. Now, the question came from the South Carolina people. If you don't have an advanced ed survey, which has the same stuff on it from South Carolina, if you don't have that, I'd pick a couple from each of these, and that just from your own knowledge of being in your business building, are concerned with your faculty. If you're in South Carolina and your district does not have an advanced ed survey, most of them do, but if they don't, you should pick 2 items from the 5 areas that I've talked about: time, facilities, resources, teacher leadership, and school leadership. You should pick 2 that traditionally are low or are concerns in your building to find out in your building to kick this thing off. So everybody's clear on that. If you're in North Carolina, you use your school's data. If your school doesn't have data, do the same thing in South Carolina. Pick 2 of these items, and be considered. So some people tell me, we've opened a new building, or we've consolidated, or for whatever reason we don't have any TWC data. Well, you don't have to. As long as you have 2 items from these 5 areas, you can get started. It's easy peasy. But again, no more than 10 questions. And don't say, well, This area, all of them are pretty good, so I'll just skip it. And I'll get 2 questions from this area. Don't don't think that's not what we paid you for. Just like I told you, my position coach used to tell me all the time, we don't pay you to think. We need for you to stick your head in the tight end's ribs when he comes across the middle. Do not think. That's where you're going to go wrong. Have at least 1 item for each of the 5 required. That's why they're called required areas. They're not suggested. There are 5 required areas. That means that when you do your needs assessment, you should assess all 5, at least 1 item from all 5, and no more than 10 questions. Now, the next question I'm going to be asked is, when we get to task 2, should we keep following up with all 5 of those areas? And the answer, of course, is yes. I've got to see all 5 of these areas in each of the 4 tasks of the CAP. You can't just do this in task 1 and in task 2 do managing student conduct. I want to do PPIS. Well, I want, grow up here. All 5, all the way. Now, if you want to add managing student conduct, I will not object to that when you get to task 2. But I do not want you putting 1,000 questions on this survey. Again, we're trying to avoid survey fatigue. If you get to task 2 and want to add managing student conduct, or if you want, if you've only got 5 questions from your 5 areas and you want to add it to task 1 and ask a question or 2 about managing student conduct, I can live with that. But you can't substitute that managing student conduct for the 5 required areas. That's why they're called required areas. That's where you can go wrong on this one. This is when you leave the road and hit the tree. From the very first decision you make, that's the one that gets you. That after that you can't fix it. After that, it just goes wrong. It just goes wrong after that. So let me see what the question is. No, so the question is can you use the district's data? No. Don't try to use the district's data. Try to pick something that you think is relevant to the school. Don't just pick the overall. I mean, if you think that the lowest items in the district kind of reflect your building, that's okay. But we're working on your specific building. Remember, working conditions is about what goes on in your building.
Yeah, Dr. Lamb, I meant, so what I was saying is we're a brand new school.
I know.
So we did not have TWC last
Right.
year.
So, but what I'm saying is what concerns do people have about your building? And so you're not really comparing this to anything. You're collecting this data. This is what you're looking at. You're saying is I'm gonna look across the district and see what people have concerns. No, just by knowing, being in your building for a while now, what concerns do you think of these that you would have? The problem with going to and looking at the concerns across the district, you're in a new facility. They're not going to be anything that they're not going to match. We're trying to look at what it's like, to work inside of your building. That's the whole notion here.
So then for prompt 1, when you are talking, like analyzing, like the teacher, the empowerment part
Right.
from previous data,
You're not really looking at it from previous data.
So we're just talking about.
You're picking. You can present the district data, but you're only doing a needs assessment to confirm what what this said. You're doing your work based off of the survey that you're putting out there with your items on it. We're not working off the big one. This just gives us a clue as to what people were concerned about. We're confirming that. We're doing a needs assessment to find our own issues with the building. We're not taking the word of the TWC. I think Dr. Caton has mentioned to you before, teachers get fatigued. They just fill stuff out. CMS, they all know that we can track who does what. So nobody in CMS in their right mind puts what's really going on theirs. And so we're doing our own needs assessment, and we're working off of our own data. We feel that's a lot more reliable than the district data to begin with, and especially in a new school. We're just using the school's TWC as a starting point to give us a suggestion, a direction. But we're doing our own needs assessment, and we're working off that. Just like in the SCIP, we did our own needs assessment for gaps in communications. We based it off of, you know, the section of TWC on community and parent support, but we did our own, you know. So the notion here is we're trying to customize this to our building. That's what we're trying to. That's a great question, though, Megan. That's a good to understand in terms of what are we trying to do overall here?
Mhm.
What is our point? What's our perspective? Well, what we're working off of here in this one, not to get too deep and philosophical, is we're working off Hertzberg's theoretical framework. I don't know that the people that designed all this stuff actually knew that, probably didn't, but it's immaterial. Frederick Hertzberg, famous social scientist from the 30s and 40s, and he called them motivators and hygienes. We now call them satisfiers and dissatisfiers. And what we know is the principle of a school building cannot be a satisfier. That's not what makes people stay. They can be a dissatisfier if they're a butthole and treat their people badly, but they can't be a satisfier. The biggest satisfier of why people stay or go, teacher retention, is working conditions. So North Carolina uses teacher working conditions survey as their federal, since they take federal funds, they are required to have a teacher retention program initiative. They're required to. It has to run at least every other year. North Carolina is not doing this out of the goodness of their heart because they actually care about teachers or care about their lot in life. If they did, they wouldn't pay them, you know, so they still have to get food stamps to eat. This is not about actually caring. This is about, if you get federal funds, you have to have a teacher retention initiative. And we know that number one reason that teachers stay or go is working conditions. Voila, that's right out of Hertzberg. That's theoretical. You know, I have a couple of my doctorals right now are doing dissertations out of Hertzberg. Genevieve's doing one. She's working with school counselors. So this is standard in our business. This is standard in our business. The Hertzberg model of social systems, working conditions, what you have to deal with every day. I don't care how much you like your principal. If you don't like actually teaching school in your building every day, then you're not going to stay. If you can find something else and pay your bills, you're not going to stay. And principals can't make you stay. Now they can run you off, and see, that's the whole notion of TWC as well. That's why it's part of principal evaluation. It's not that, you know, it's the conditions themselves that will make you stay, but a bad principal, you will leave a bad person, a bad boss. We know that. That's the other side. You know, that's the you know, the hygiene side of, you know, that's the satisfier, dissatisfier part. And so the whole notion here is through the CAP, they're trying to teach you that. We're trying to teach you that by doing the CAP, that the culture of your building, what goes on in your building day to day, has a major impact on teacher retention. A lot more than salary, a lot more than anything else. You'd think it would be salaries is not even second on the list. Working conditions. And so we're only interested in your building, what goes on in your building. And we're just using TWC as our launching point, and we're conducting our own needs assessment. That's what we're doing in task one. We're connecting, and then we're coming up with some recommendations. And then in task two, we're going out and we're doing our qualitative work. We're saying, here's our recommendations to fix these problems that have been identified in our building. What do you think? You think this will work, or is it, you know, this is the stupidest thing you ever heard? You know, what do you think would fix these problems? Is this a viable solution to this problem? And you know, we want some of that empowerment, but we also want solutions. I mean, Again, when you just look at data, sometimes if you just look at the hard numbers, now remembering I'm a quantitative person, I do methodology, I do quantitative, but I teach both quantitative and qualitative. But usually when you hire me to be on your dissertation committee, I'm your methodologist that does the quantitative piece. Understanding that, but I will tell you, the qualitative is where that really, that colors in the lines. That's where the richness of data comes from, is from the qualitative. And I've used the example before, teachers report all the time they don't have enough planning time. Well, we could recommend, changing our schedule or modifying and all this. But if you talk to teachers, they'll tell you, I've got plenty built into the schedule. I just never get to take it because I'm covering classes. You won't find that out through the quantitative survey. What you have to do the qualitative work where you talk to people to find that out. Remember, quantitative is a score from a validated measure. Qualitative is interviews, observations, and documents. Talking to people. How can I fix this problem? Here's a solution that we've come up with. My team and I have come up with this set of recommendations to fix these problems from these 5 to 10 items. Here's the problem. Here's our recommendation to address that problem. What do you think? What do you think? That's what you're trying to do with the CAP. That's what you're trying to do. I'm going to switch over to our resident principals here. I'll start with Dr. Kagan about how she goes about taking that data and then putting it in place in her building.
So I think I've mentioned it before that what I do every year is I give the survey out at the end of the year. It says what worked, what did not work. And that helps me to get a better insight of what was really going on. And it's anonymous, but some of them will come up and talk to me about it, but it really helps me to know exactly. That's how I knew about I think I talked about it last time with the facilities, why is a little bit lower was because of copy codes. I'd given them copy codes and they'll tell you. And if you do just simple what worked, what didn't work, you have to kind of don't take a lot of emotion to that. You have to make sure you use it to be beneficial to your building. And also I take the school improvement plan, the teacher working conditions survey to my school improvement team. And I talk to them and I ask them to, give me some ideas. Why do you think this? And that's the only way you can make sure you have the improvement within your building is to have those frank conversations. And
yeah.
Sometimes it can be, well, you think to yourself, like, well, do you know the reason why I did this? Or it could be your special project or something like that. But you need to know those type of things because it really benefits your school. It makes it better. So
you need that input. Thank you, Dr. Kagan. You need that input. You need that feedback. You need that qualitative work, that interviews, observations. You need that. People need to have our stakeholders. They need to have buy-in. They need to know that you care and that you're listening to them. And a lot of times they just especially with me, they just had better ideas than I did.
And I purposely, when at the beginning of the year, my school improvement chair, she'll present to the staff and say, this is what you said, what didn't work, and this is what you said worked. So they know that I have shared it with the school improvement team, that I'm actually looking at it, and this is the things that we're doing because of what you said. So I make sure that I share with them to show them that we're looking at that.
Yeah. Dr. Maraglia?
We have a few different things that we use. In CMS, each school is supposed to have what is called a faculty advisory committee, the FAC, and teachers are able to anonymously give concerns to that group, or they can also go into the meeting and share concerns there. And then the chairperson of the FAC meets periodically with the principal to discuss those concerns and any possible solutions that are shared in their discussion. No administrators meet with the FAC. It is strictly the staff members who meet, and every area is represented. But one thing that I think is really important to consider is if there's a concern, what are some of the solutions for that concern? Everything shouldn't come back on administration to solve a problem. you know, what would people like to see? And then you have to have the discussion is, was that even feasible or not? You know,
Mhm.
let's talk about what can really happen. What, as an administrator, what can I really do in terms of money, resources, whatever it may be? And then another thing that we also do, we have, I've mentioned before, we have multi-classroom lead teachers at our school. And when they meet with teachers on a weekly basis to discuss planning, they also discuss what's working, what's not. So we're not even waiting for survey time or FAC time. We're getting feedback on a weekly basis. And because the relationship between the teachers and their MCL is more of a coach as opposed to the administrator part of that and the evaluator part of that, we're getting stuff pretty quickly in real time about any concerns that are popping up. And the MCLs know, they have been trained to talk to teachers about, okay, this is a concern, but now what are some possible solutions? Sometimes they're able to handle things right there in the meeting, but then sometimes things get a little bit bigger and they have to come up to administration, and we take it from there.
Mhm.
But I feel like those have been very helpful for us in terms of making sure that we know what's going on in the building, how staff members are feeling, and where their concerns are. And like I think I said this last week, when you hear concerns, don't feel like, okay, well, this is something we'll address when we start school next year. It's okay to make changes in the middle of the year if it's going to help make things better in your building, whether it's instruction or morale or whatever it is. Don't be hesitant to make a change if it needs to be made. You would certainly
Mhm.
make one if it involves safety.
Mhm. That's correct. But what Dr. Maraglia, to summarize here, what she's saying there is something that you ought to pick up on if you're perceptive. Very helpful. We ask people, we don't just say, what do you think? We give them some context. That's one of the things that you learn real quickly is you have to give folks context. Here's the problem, here's the recommendations I have. What do you think of these? And that gets buy-in for them to have some ownership. But it's also, as Dr. Maraglia said, what would you do? If you don't think this, that places some of that responsibility on them as well. But it gets them into the part where I've been consulted, but I have to be part of the solution as well. I can't just blame the administration for everything that don't go right in my life, and it's always their responsibility to make me happy every day. We get into that. We get into a more professional adult relationship rather than a subordinate superordinate role where the administrator treats teachers like children, and then they're just as that immature and whine and complain if they don't get everything they want. You have to break out of that mode, that paternalistic mode that we had in schools forever, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, where you had a male principal with all female teachers, and it was a very paternalistic thing. We're trying to break into a more professional mode where teachers have a responsibility to come up with solutions just as well as administrators do. That we can't just blame it all on the administration. Teachers have a responsibility as well. We have a responsibility as administrators to be concerned about their conditions and to ask them, to talk to them. But they have a responsibility to have a better idea than we have. And again, from a more purely theoretical standpoint, this is also good practice in that you should always follow up in action research in real life. We're not doing theoretical work now. In real life action research, that you should always do a mixed methodology convergent design where you follow up your quantitative work, which is the survey, TWC, with qualitative work where you ask people to fill in, to color in the blanks, to give you the whys. How can we fix it? Why is it this bad? What can we do to fix it? That's always the best practice in action research, and that's what we're doing here. This is action research. It's always analysis and action plan. All these plans are action research. They're real. If you get time, you can Google action research. Oh, that's what you do when you're actually really doing stuff. Well, yeah, that's what we're doing. And a best practice in action research, again, is mixed methodology, both quantitative and qualitative in that order, a convergent design, where your qualitative follows up your quantitative. Really simple stuff. And when you're in the doctoral program with me, I'll teach you this stuff. And you better learn it or I'll pull all your nose hairs out. All right, so let's move on to school finance tonight. I've got a couple documents. Let me share my screen. So first thing we need to look at is our weekly assignment. Let me get back over on this browser. Looking at our weekly assignment. So you were supposed to interview an administrator about fundraising, and as I wrote into your responses, the takeaway on that is it doesn't matter who you delegate it to, you're responsible for it as principal. PTA, PTO, band, chorus, booster club, doesn't matter. All of it has to be turned, the money has to be turned in and reconciled. The same, you know, all the rules, the financial rules that we're going to cover in a minute apply. And you've got policies in your district. You were supposed to find those. But the main thing is in effect, you're better off. I'm just going to tell you right now, you're better off doing it yourself. Parent groups, you'll have to let them, but they'll drive you crazy. And you know that, you know, on a regular basis, in districts all across North and South Carolina, they abscond with the money on a regular basis. It always happens. You know, it happened, and for every time you hear about it, there's 100 that you don't. As somebody who worked in the central office in a couple different districts, I can tell you it happens all the time. But that's part of the business. And the other is 5 most important steps in the budgeting process. And the response that you get from me all is I don't really care what your administrator thought, as long as you've got a process. That's the important thing, is that you've got a process. And most of it starts with, it all centers back on how much money you got and what you can spend it on. That's what it always comes back to. How much have you got in each account? And what is the allowable purchase with that money? And then, you know, and what are those budget categories? Well, that's in your, you know, that's in your budget. There's federal, there's state, there's local, there's federal, state, local, and individual school money. And there's different accounts, and even inside of those, all federal money's not the same. We know there's EC, there's 504, there's exceptional children, there's English as second language, there's gifted, there's Title I, there's CTE. How many more? That's 7. We know all of those are separate. And then rules will vary even within those, just like if you're a Title I school, if you're a Title I program or a Title I school. So you've got all those different under the federal. Then your state monies, you get, most of that comes in salaries. You do get some instructional money, and I don't even know if you get, you don't even get any professional development money from the state anymore. You used to. And then for a while there, we got a little money for like office supplies, stamps. I don't think you get that anymore either, but there's different accounts within that, but different budget codes within that one as well. And then your local money, and then, you know, there's different accounts with it, whether it's instructional, whether it's capital, those kinds of things. The 2 biggies in that are instructional and capital. Instruction is, this is what it says, and capital is like facilities. And then your school money, you usually have 2 accounts on that, 3 if you're in high school with your booster clubs, and, you know, requires 2 signatures, the whole deal. So you need to understand that federal money is not just one account. It's at least 7 multiple accounts. And then you have, you know, all of these, you need to understand what the budget is and how much you have in each one of these. And that's the biggest, you know, in terms of the most important part of budgeting is, what are the accounts and how much money do I have and how can I spend it? That's it. The rest is all just, you know, is all just extra. But, you know, what are the accounts, how much are in them, and how can I spend them? And of course, you know, the local ones, you have to raise the money to put in those accounts. All right, so that's what we were doing. So next week we're going to be doing financial management, resource allocation. We're going to be doing resources, looking at a case study, and then our next week then will be our case study. So this is your 2-week warning. Let's see. Yeah, this is the 21st. And then I gave you your 2-week warning last week. So this is your 1-week warning on case studies. So next week we'll do our case study next week, and then we'll finish up with that one. Okay. All right. So that's where we are. And so I've got a document in here under this week, under week 13, which is really, there's only a couple in there. The school-based budget, that is a PowerPoint that pretty much walks you through everything about school-based budgets that I just encapsulated for you. And this is all of the actual historic and background pieces. It talks about all these kinds of things. It starts with federal and works all the way through them. So I've just encapsulated that for you. But here's what this is what we really want to cover tonight. This is the most important piece, is this document. What I have done is I've gone in and I have pulled all the financial laws for you. I haven't done it for South Carolina. I have done it for North Carolina. South Carolina has exactly the same stuff in their they call theirs titles, TITLES. And so we go to budget laws, duties and powers of the principal. The principal shall maintain a copy of the school's current budget and shall allow parents of children in the school and other interested persons to review and obtain such documents. So every semester, and I have this semester, I have somebody that comes back to me privately and says, my principal says we don't give out the school budget. Yeah, they do. It's a public document, same as your school improvement plan. It's a public document. And so you have to develop that budget every year, starting in the spring of the year. And it has to be on file in your school for anybody that walks in and says, I would like to see your budget. You have to hand them a copy. That's how that works. Now, remembering that funding to schools, state funding works on the modified accrual accounting system. So it means that you have to have enough money on hand from your district to run your school for the first month, to pay your teachers, those kinds of things, with your state funds. And then at the end of the first month, they will reimburse you. So that's why you've always heard, our enrollment and at the end of 20 days is how many our teacher allotments. We may gain one, we may lose one. Well, that's why it works that way. When that per pupil, that $8,000 a year per pupil comes to your school through your district to your school in the form of your teachers' salaries and those things, they don't send all the $8,000 up front. They divide into 10 equal payments. They send it $800 at a time, and they subtract absenteeism. I've told you that, average daily membership. So if your average daily membership is 5%, is 95%, that means that any given day, the average for the month was 5% absenteeism. They knock 5%, they knock $40 off your $800 that month for that student. That's the way that works. You only get paid if they come to school, and you don't get the money up front. So this notion, like people say, well, that kid started in that charter school and they got all the money for the year, and now they came back to public school and we don't get. No, that's not true. They might have got the first month, but that's all they got. After that, the money follows the kid. That's not accurate. That's not how that works. They don't pay you up front for all year long. They pay you by the month, and only after the first month. And so your finance officer at your school and for your district has to certify that you spent the money as it was supposed to be spent. And if you didn't spend it how it was supposed to be spent, the state will not reimburse it. So, and the school board does the same thing on the monies that you spend on your local money. And the feds do the same thing on the money that you spent. So there is somebody accounting for and approving after you've already made. See, the problem is they don't weigh in until after you've already spent the money. It's the modified accrual accounting system is you spend the money, we give it back. Well, I need to know before I spend it for the right thing, because if I spend it and then later on they tell me, well, you didn't spend that on the right thing, they won't give it back. They won't give you your money back. And you won't be able to continue operating. See, that's the problem. That's the punitive part of the modified accrual accounting system, is that you spend it, and if you got it wrong, then the money's gone and you can't get it back. So you got to remember that. So that's what it tells you right here, modified accrual basis of accounting. That's what that means. Your district has to have enough money on hand to pay for the first month. They submit those vouchers to the state, the feds, everybody gives them, reimburses that money, which means they now have money to run the second month of school. Problem comes in, you have enough money on hand, you run the first month and they say these expenditures aren't allowable, then you don't have money to do it the second month. You've already made obligations. So it's a very punitive system, is what I'm telling you. And you don't get it wrong but once, and then the next principal gets to decide whether it's by that or not. You don't make these mistakes but one time. It's about your house. You know, it's very modified accrual accounting system is very penal. They punish you when kids don't come to school. They make you pay up front and they reimburse you. They don't ever pay. They're the proverbial friend of yours that go to lunch and never picks up a check. That would be the state and the feds. It's a very penal system. That's why it's imperative that you know where all these what sources of funds do I have, where did it come from, what I can spend it on, how much is it, where did it come from, how much is it, and what can I spend it on. Before you ever spend a dollar, you need to know those three things. Because if you get this wrong, it won't go well for you. Daily deposits, all money must be receipted, turned in daily. Can't keep any money overnight. You have to receipt, just like ball games and those kinds of things. You have to do a reconciliation. You have to do drop deposits at night, if nothing else. You can't keep money at school. That's a biggie. You have to so if you're having a ball game on Friday night and it's 10 o'clock before the game's over, well, as soon as you get the reconciliation done at the ticket booth with the tickets, you're supposed to sell tickets. You need to take it, drop it, and deposit, and then you can, we would pay security, just stand there until they got it all ready and had a deposit slip and dropped it in the night deposit box. Now, some places go and drop it in with that, and they can retrieve it later and then do that. But it can't stay in the ticket booth or at the stadium or in your office. It can't be on campus overnight, even at a Friday night ball game. That's the biggie. And the independent audit, you get audited every year. Now, people have the wrong notion about auditors. They think auditors tell you what you can spend money on not or not. No, auditors just follow the money that you spend. They're not around. That's ex post facto, after the fact. They come at the end of the year. They're not there at the beginning of the year to tell you don't do that. That's an inappropriate way. That they find out after the fact that you spent the money wrong. Auditors are not there to help you in decision making as the year goes along. They're there to do the post mortem. Did it go wrong? That doesn't make them bad people, but you've got to understand, the auditors won't keep you out of trouble. That's not their job. You got to keep all your books and records, those things. You need a good financial secretary. If you don't have a good one, you better get you a good one. That's the treasurer for each school. That's what we commonly call the financial secretary. You'll have to have 2 signatures on checks of your local funds. Your school funds have to have 2 signatures on checks. Everything above the school level, you have to send to the purchasing department in your district for their approval, and they do an invoice system, and then they do the payment through an invoice. But anything that you buy at your school level, either any of the 3 accounts, 2 or 3 accounts you have, requires your signature and your financial secretaries, that are in effect the treasurer. There's no single signature checks from your local accounts. Now, understanding capital, again, 1966, North and South Carolina, the state got out of the building business. So you get buildings by either saving your money and building them or letting a bond, which is borrowing the money and building buildings. Your local district has to do that. And then your local district is responsible to keep them up as well. Remember, the only money that comes to help you with capital is pork barrel money out of the lottery, Leandro. And it's rare and few and far between. And it's not consistent. It's not in an allotment basis that comes every year. It's just a pork barrel, and very, very the chance that you'll be a principal and that you'll get lottery money is probably 1 in 100 over your career that you would be in a school that got any lottery money. Understanding that that's state money, understanding that pretty much all the money that you're ever going to deal with in your career on capital, on buildings and grounds is local money, is local Board of Education money, and that you're going to have to and so the point there is there's a little more flexibility with that because it's local money, but you still have to be accountable for it. Let me say that again. The thing to remember about capital money, unless it's that lottery money, which is an asterisk by that, capital money is local to your Board of Education in your county. Comes from your county commissioners. There's a little more flexibility with it, but you still have to maintain all the accounting rules just like you do state and federal funds is the point. Don't think because, this is local money, so I don't have to, we don't have to be as stringent we don't have to follow all those old stuffy rules. No, doesn't matter. Even though it is local money, you still have to follow the same rules on it. Still responsible. And that's what this tells you right here. Safe keep and keep after it. And you still, that money still goes through the same process, even though it's local. All right. It talks about school business. Now, I've got CMS, but everywhere you are, you've got local policies in your district. It's what you have similar in your LEA, and these will mirror and expand on the ones from the state. And it says right here that you will follow the accounting procedures of the school system, the modified accrual system. Same way, be an invoice, a voucher system. It speaks to fundraising and the approvals that you've got to have, and even says what kind they want. That you can't do instructional time. You can't trade state dollars for local dollars because it's a bad trade, and it makes the state mad. And what I mean is, we're paying a teacher's salary. She's making $25 an hour. That's that's a couple $100 a day, $1,000 a week, $4,000 a month. Times 10 months, $40,000 a year. That's pretty much the average teacher salary in North Carolina is like $42,000. So that's kind of it. It's about $25 an hour is what you're paying. It doesn't make sense to take somebody making $200 a day and we're paying them but the states keep paying them to teach, and we can't get that state money go straight to that teacher. And so what we can do is take them and use them in their instructional time while the state's paying them to teach. We can use them to raise money, make us some money on the side. Well, that's against the rules. The state says you can't do that, and the local even says, we have to mirror that same rule. So we can't be using state paid teachers during the time that the state's paying them to raise money for us locally. We're not allowed to do that. And we got to get all this stuff. We got to get all this stuff approved. We can't be running businesses that would compete with local businesses out of the high schools to make money either, like tailoring and cosmetology and auto mechanics and those kinds of things. We can't be doing that because that competes with local businesses as well. And why am I paying my taxes over here, and then here's the local high school out here building these little outbuildings? I'm selling them for $1,000, and they're over there with free labor getting materials donated, selling them for $300. I can't compete with that. They're putting me out of business. Or cosmetology was the big one. photography was the big one. That's why we got out of the photography business. But it pre-tickets, all these are the rules. Pre-numbered tickets for all athletic contests have to do reconciliation. That's called the ticket sellers report. All that money's cannot be taken. In no case shall funds be left at school or taken home overnight. It's got to be night deposit. All these rules are for the money that you've raised at your school. And then all the money has to be used to benefit school programs. All money has to be approved up front and tell us how much you're going to raise and what you're going to use it for. And then we got non-compete parts in this. You can't run a private business, no soliciting or selling any non-school authorized items during work time or work areas. Anything, you can't be putting brochures about your real estate agent on the side, or selling your kids books or candy in the workroom or the faculty. All that stuff is prohibited. Tutoring your own kids that you teach, that's a no-no. Now, I had a rule that just me. I didn't want teachers charging for tutoring any kids that went to our building, that worked in our building. I just felt like it was too big a conflict of interest, because then they would come to me and want me not to have them in their room so they could charge them. And that's not good.
May I
And
add a couple of
so,
things?
yeah, I'm here at the end, and then the last thing here is you can read this. All right, I'm going to turn it over for the closeout from our resident principal.
A couple of things also I would say that's not up there: gift cards. Sometimes we as principals like to give gift cards to our teachers, for, I don't know, attaboys or anything like that. Just know that gift cards are considered part of their salary, and they would have to claim it on a W-2. So that's if it's paid, from school funds. Sometimes I will have parents who will donate things like that, but just know you can't use school funds to buy gift cards to give teachers. So just be aware of that. Another thing that's not up there, but I would totally go against, but I've been at several schools where they pass the envelope, like for condolences, like if somebody passed or something. Don't do that. Don't allow that. I've had to stop that at a couple of schools that I've done. I don't generally have a sunshine committee. I just do for everybody. I don't say if you don't put in the sunshine committee, you don't get a plant or flower. I just do the same for everybody, and I just do that out of school funds. But just be aware of those type of things as well, in addition to what he just talked about.
Yeah. The irony at Gardner Webb is we set up an account like a sunshine fund for the School of Education. And then the first time we went to use it, the person that set it up said, "Oh, we can't give you that. You can't distribute that. That's against the law." And so don't get into sunshine funds. They are not legal. They're a whole lot more trouble than they're worth. But yeah, that happened just recently with us, and I just laughed. And so yeah, you got to take care of those things. Now, one of the things that you can do, and I was famous for doing, which are infamous or stupid to do, I would buy food and clothing rather than gift cards. You can do that.
Yeah, I do.
Like like Church's Fried Chicken on Fridays. You can do something like that, or the chicken coop. Price of chicken coop. You can do that on Friday, and you can buy athletic wear apparel, and you can hand those out. But again. But if you give them money or gift cards, same as, then you got to account for that, and they have to account for it as well on the W-2. And the district has to go through all through their books as well. And that's why Gardner Webb said, no, you can't do this, because we'd have to run this through our books.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do that. So I don't know what we're going to do with that fund that has accrued, but I'm sure that somebody smarter than me will figure that out. But
I'm very good at begging for people to pay for stuff for our staff. Very good at that.
right.
I'm very good at finding alternative ways to raise money for the school. I'm gonna do whatever needs to be done so that with that flexible money.
Yeah. The big thing is don't be running businesses out of the school. Don't let teachers run their own businesses out of school.
Right.
Don't be
Because they'll want to put Cincy in the teacher's lounge and all that stuff, and you'll have to say,
right.
or Avon or
Yeah,
Mary
yeah,
Kay.
yeah, yeah. We don't want to be competing with other businesses. We don't want to be using instructional time. I mean, we're a school. Yes, it takes money to run, but our most important commodity is time. If a gift card is donated from an outside group to give to teachers, that's compensation. It's money or same as what they call, same as. If you give money to teachers, it has to be accounted for. No matter what the origin of it is, you have to account for it. And so most districts have a policy against that. It can't come through you to give them extra money. There's an expectation then that keeps coming. And you can't, or that everybody, then that everybody gets it, or that it keeps coming. We can't do that. So gift cards and money are a no-no. Now, if they want to give them to them privately and you're not involved, but they can't give it to you to give to them. No, that's a no bueno. You can't do that. It's compensation. Dr. Maraglia, you got anything to close us out tonight? Words of wisdom.
My words of wisdom tonight would be, you can't learn finance until you are in the position. It's just one of those things about
Down
administration.
everything in the camper.
You can do anything, you can watch the principal doing what they do, but it's on the job training. But I would say whatever district you're in, find out about any training they may have for principals. If you get a coach, or if there's an experienced principal you can work with, because this is an area that will get you. But I've had an auditor just say to me before, we don't do a good job training our principals to be prepared for the financial piece of it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, all of this is great, and you need to have this as a resource. But when it comes to doing the actual tasks that go along with this, you need to make sure that anything that is offered to you, that you take it, so you know exactly what's expected of you. Because they'll give you the keys, and they just think you know how to do everything, and you don't. So that would be my words of wisdom, is to learn every single thing you can to help you be better prepared.
Yeah.
May I say, I don't know how y'all do it at Charlotte Meck, but I will tell you that every school that I've ever gone to as a principal, the first thing I've done is ask for an internal audit.
Everybody,
First
that's
thing.
standard. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm gonna tell you, some places won't do it, and you have to ask, because they were
Well,
not gonna do it when I walked in.
Well, I've had to say, well, then I won't come back until you do one.
That's what I've had to say. Like, I'm not writing or doing anything until you do the audit.
Until you do. You get the audit. First thing you do when you go to a building is you get an audit. And what Dr. Maraglia was talking about was what I was referring to earlier tonight, is the auditors aren't there to help you. They don't train you. They don't work with you up front. They simply got you on the back end. That's all really that their role is. And they'll, as she said, they'll even admit, we don't do enough to train our people. Well, it's not that, but they don't do enough. They don't do anything to train their people. The audit function is just a gotcha. It's a post-mortem. It's a scorecard at the end of the round, whatever metaphor you want to use. It's not for training purposes. What is it? You see those signs, not for training purposes, for demonstration only, or whatever. Audits are not for training purposes. The only thing that that can happen out of an audit exciting is not good, is what I'm telling you. They're not going to train you. They're not going to work with you. They're going to get you in the end, is how that works. That's the point of an audit. It's not education. You can't depend on that. So as Dr. Maraglia said, I can tell you what all the rules are. I can show you all of them. I can teach you modified accrual accounting. which I would do if I were teaching you finance at the doctoral level. That's what I would exactly be teaching you. I'd be teaching you all that stuff, but in the end, every district's a little different. Everything that you can get them to do, get an audit when you go to a building, ask for an independent audit, you know, of all the, and sit down, and everything that they will teach you, everything that they will train you. And again, your default should be no on everything. That we can't spend it this way, or we can't do this with it. Everything that comes to you financially, your default should be no, not yes. Until you walk it all the way through everybody involved. Is this appropriate way to spend this money? Everything, your default should always be no, until you've walked it all the way through. Because this is the most penal area of operations in terms of, you don't even have to break the law. If you know, you don't even have to break the law for them to get you in this area. You say, well, who is them? Well, you know, the auditors and the folks in the central office. Remember, we're talking about public funds, and nobody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be seen as a conservator or you know, taking good care of the public weal, the public funds. And this is a financial nightmare when you have somebody steal money from your school, PTA abscond with it, you misspend it innocently, you know. All these things are financial nightmares, but that feeds into this notion of government waste. And so districts are deathly afraid of that, and they overreact. And I've been in the center. I can tell you, I might have been one of them. But districts overreact on financial. I'll be the first to acknowledge that. But just because they tell you that, that doesn't mean that because they're not going to change it. Because it's wrong doesn't mean they're going to change it. They're always going to. Folks in the central office are always going to err on the side of, you know, of hysteria over anything financial. It's just the way it goes. You know, so nowadays, you know, inappropriate relationship, especially with students and money. I don't care how modern times get, inappropriate relationships with students and money can't work in our business. They'll, you know, even if it's not illegal, if it even hints or looks like it's not going to go well for you. So there's that. So hopefully now you have an overarching notion of how finances work in school. Again, we'll sit down, you know, when you get to the doctoral program and you have your school finance class, we'll sit and we'll work through all of these things on a very much more specific basis. But my job is to get you to understand, going in as an assistant principal, you need to start watching and learning from your principal how finances work. But don't assume that it's going to work that way at the next building that you go to. Every building you go to, you need to learn the rules of how it works. And again, your default is no until you understand what you're doing better. Your default on spending a penny on anything is always no. All right. So remember, next week is case study night. I can't wait. It's our final one. It's the biggie. It touches every corner of everything that we've covered this whole semester in next week's case study. And so I'm looking for some really good ones. I'm excited about hearing them. So if nobody else has anything, we're a little past our time tonight. Thank you. I knew we would because we spent a good bit of time on the cap, but make sure you review this in terms of what these laws are, and you look at the PowerPoint on how the sources of where money comes from. Those are the two things I need for you to know from this course. You know those, you're good to go from this course until you get to the next level. All right. So everybody have a good week. I will see you next week for case study night. Everybody stay safe. Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
All right.